Hi. So I've been running an interiors agony aunt over on Instagram for the last couple of years, and I have decided to do it on YouTube so that I can go into it in a little bit more detail and explain some of the principles behind my advice. So I put a call out on Instagram to say, got some submissions, I've got some space for some submissions, and I had quite a lot in, but I've just decided to focus on 2 or 3 in a YouTube video. So let's get to it. Whenever I am assessing a space for either a design or a styling consultation, I'm generally focusing on 3 things. What is the arrangement like, which includes things like scale? What is the texture like? Fairly obvious. And what are the contrasts like? What kind of contrasts are happening? So when I'm going through these rooms, they are the things that I'm always thinking: arrangement, texture, and contrast. If you want to learn more about that, I have a free masterclass that really delves into it. There'll be a link in the show notes. So professional now. So the first space we have is this really lovely kids room. So the first thing I'd say is that this is a gorgeous room. There's colour and texture and fun. If I was a kid, I would love this room. They've already painted the blue floor, which I love, which I think is a temporary thing. They're going to eventually put carpet down for warmth, but for now, I really love the blue floor. When I am looking at this kids' room, I think the main issue is around the arrangement. So generally, when you are arranging things nicely, it's about how scale works. So are things in proportion to each other, which they are not quite in this room. And this is a common thing for kids' rooms because you tend to buy tiny little things. And this room looks like it has a relatively high ceiling, and it just feels like everything is a bit too little. So when I'm thinking about the arrangement, I think the scale is not quite right. I think we need some slightly taller items, something that stretches the eye a bit up and down. And I have some solutions for what we can do there. Are there some nice groupings here of furniture and objects and things on the wall? And what I mean by that is, are there groupings and then is there white space around it? So my eye currently cannot see the edges of the room. Very rarely anyway. So I think that we need to kind of pull things together a little bit more so that there's a little bit more white space so that my eye can flow around the room a little bit more easily. Arrangement also helps to create focal points, and in this room I'm not sure what the focal point is. I would suggest that it's good to make the focal point the bed and also the desk area. So in this case, I've got some ideas about moving the rug toward the bed. I think the art above the bed is already good. Maybe a second piece of art, or move the mobile next to the art. So then that creates a nice grouping. And then on the other wall, have a wall-mounted bookshelf that frees the floor space, which will help to make the room feel bigger. And then group some art and the cute little zebra head above the desk. Under this window here, is this unit needed? Could this be combined into the wardrobe or the drawers or under the bed? Also texture, let's talk texture. So there's already some great texture in here. I love the texture of the light, the texture of the rug and the blanket. However, I would say the rug it's an island floating in the middle of the floor at the moment, and it kind of chops the space up. Ideally, you want your rug to be touching all the main bits of furniture in the space. So I would tuck it under the bed. I also think the curtains aren't doing much for the room at the moment. So that curtain pole really ideally would extend slightly wider than it does, maybe just be a touch higher to the ceiling, and it should have, I think, 2 full length curtains on either side. Having that will give a sense of symmetry, which is really, really important when you're arranging a space. And also symmetry helps the space to feel cohesive. And having floor to ceiling curtains will also solve the proportion and scale issue that I highlighted at the start. Contrast, there are already some really great contrasts here. I wonder if I would consider bringing in some more contrast with colour, perhaps in the curtains, maybe painting the ceiling yellow, for example. And then I've just done some very crude mock-ups below of what I would do here. So I thought the lampshade is nice here. but it's a little bit high and maybe it's a bit long. I feel like there's something dragging about it. So I think what I would do is go for something slightly larger, wider and flatter, where you can't see the bulb. That is a personal bugbear of mine. I don't like to see the bulb of a light. Those two bookshelves here, I think I would probably replace with a wall-mounted book display, and then have half or more of the books away in the wardrobe or in baskets on top of the wardrobe, because actually kids thrive on less stuff. Toy rotation is an absolute game changer. It will help the whole room to feel calmer as well. So I'd get rid of half the books and just put a selection on a wall-mounted bookshelf. This is from the Great Little Trading Company. I would also have I'd group the art together above the desk. So currently it's a little bit scattered here. So what I would do is group it together and bring it above the desk. So then again, it just brings it into a focal point and it makes it feel less scattered, more intentional and more cohesive. That, I just did a really quick Google for that. I very crudely added a bit of colour to the ceiling. On this side, I've moved the rug closer to the bed. Doesn't it look so much better with a pair of full length curtains, a nice full weight to it? You want a good drape to it as well. So these are actually just from Dunelm Green Gingham. One extra thing, when it comes to curtains, I avoid ring top or tab top curtains. They just don't drape nicely. They don't hang nicely when they're open or when they're closed. I would always recommend going for a pleated top or just a traditional gathered top using curtain tape. As a budget measure, you could potentially buy a ring top or a tab top curtain, cut off the top and then sew on some curtain tape, maybe a bit of interlining as well. And then to solve the issue of height in the room that we talked about, where nothing is quite tall enough, I would just add something on top of the wardrobe. So add a couple of storage baskets or boxes on top of the wardrobe. And I would also have a more imposing light fixture that comes down slightly lower, and that is wider and larger, and again helps to bring the eye up and helps the room to feel a bit more in proportion. Yeah, so that's I think what I would do in the kids' room. Grouping of art, less books and in a slightly different display, pair of full-length curtains, clear the space underneath the window, stuff on top of the wardrobe to kind of draw the eye up, and a bigger pendant as well. Okay, so now we are coming to a kitchen. So let me just get up what this person says. We have a large kitchen dining room which previous owners put up. It's full of the usual junk and kid stuff as it's our main living space. Now my kids are a bit older, I'd like to try and reclaim it and turn the diner part into more of a dining room with softer furnishings, softer lighting, maybe a big rug, so it's less like a playroom. Also, any advice on how to zone the kitchen so it feels connected and also separate, as it's just one big white room at the moment. I'm just going to show you the photos of what we've got, and then I'll talk through some of my solutions. So I think this person is completely right about softness. So this space needs softness. It feels cold. There's a hard, cold grey floor, harsh white walls. Everything is very angled. There aren't very many soft edges. There's a curve in the back of the chairs, but that's about it. So I feel like we need warmth, softness, texture, and colour. So in terms of zoning, I would go for a really huge big rug in the dining area, probably a washable rug. There's loads now in warm tones. That's really important. We need to warm this room up. So that's the first thing, a huge big rug which would ground this space and make it feel very different to the kitchen. I would also build a big long row of upholstered seating along this wall, a bit like these inspiration images, to add softness and colour and just make it a more welcoming place to be. And it could stretch all the way down the wall like this one, and you could have storage underneath it or leave it open. Up to you, do you need the storage? So yeah, built-in bench seats, existing table and chairs here. Does the desk need to be in this room? Is this the best place for it? Is there another fridge here? I couldn't quite work it out from the photos, but whatever this cupboard is, could it be rehomed or replaced with something that doesn't extend so far into the room? Now, I can see from these photos that you aren't afraid of colour. There's red in this print here and in some of the art and in the tablecloth. And I wonder if you would be open to having a little bit more colour. I really think this room is crying out for some colour, and I have some ideas. So I love a painted window frame, something like this from Decorate Blog. And I would just paint all of that beautiful apex window and the doors, and maybe even the window frames of the Velux windows above as well. And it's just a great way of adding a bit of colour while still keeping the rest of the space white, or maybe preferably a soft white if it's going to be white. So there's one idea. Also, I do like the idea of treating the kitchen bit slightly differently with colour. So a couple of very rough ideas here. Painting the walls, for example, a pale blue, because it's going to be dark back here, so we need to be a little bit careful that it doesn't feel too cave-like. But then stopping that colour before it goes into the dining area, or just repainting the kitchen units, which is actually very simple to do. I can see that they're high gloss at the moment, but removing them, removing the handle, a light sand with, and then a primer. A primer like Zinza is what I've used before, and then a hard-wearing eggshell. There are some now companies that do specific paint for this kind of door. So do some research yourself, but it's definitely possible. You can also have them resprayed as well. And that would, again, add some lovely colour. And that could be the same colour as you paint the windows at the end of the room, so there's a little bit of connection, or a different colour. I would probably be tempted to lose the tablecloth. As much as I like the colour and the pattern, the wood finish on the table will be nice, less plasticky, and warmer as well. If you're worried about it being ruined, you can give it a sand and an extra coat of varnish on it if you don't want to have the marks on it. And when you are choosing fabrics for the built-in bench seating, go for warm colours. And another way to add softness would be to add some kind of window treatment, and that's what interiors call curtains or blinds, even if they're mostly decorative. That will really help to soften all of the hard edges around the door. Okay, next, space. So Becky says, not sure if this is too extreme. We are mid-renovation of other areas. Why the TV, food, storage, and the areas in this room? Yeah, I think we can all have some sympathy there. So pre-reno, it was also a home office. My partner's job is full on, and he struggles to sleep. Having the office in the bedroom is not good for this. I really want to create a haven that promotes relaxation and better sleep hygiene. We're planning on getting rid of the wardrobes. We are getting rid of the wall lights. Any recommendations for colour and general styling? Okay, so again, I'm thinking arrangement, texture, and contrast. The main point here is that this needs to be a haven for relaxation. Post-renovation, can the study be elsewhere? Can it be in a corner of the kitchen? Is there a whole separate study perhaps? If not, can the study area be fully sectioned off in this room somehow? But ideally, can you create the study in another room in the house? That's going to be my main thing. And then in terms of it being a relaxing haven, I'd be looking at really soft, neutral, calming colours like whites and greens. Or maybe something a bit bolder, because again, I can see from some of these pictures here, you obviously like some bright colours. I also wanted to address, before I get into the main tips here about this room, is that while you are renovating, I have some tips. I actually have a whole podcast called Surviving a Renovation that has loads of listener tips. I'll link it in the show notes. But I would say, while you're in the midst of the chaos of a renovation, try where possible to put as much stuff that isn't necessary into boxes and stack them at the side of the room out the way. Make the bed, buy the flowers, and create islands of calm. So amongst the chaos, create small styled areas, small little surfaces on a mantelpiece, a bedside table, a sideboard, that have a collection of things that you love, that give you hope that you're going to get the space that you really want eventually. Okay, so islands of calm, and it is always worth tidying up. It's always worth buying the flowers and decluttering as much as you can. Okay, so now let's get to some styling principles. So arrangement. Now I know this person said they wanted to get rid of the wall lights. I personally actually love a wall light. And I would say, instead of getting rid of it, if you don't like the actual light, maybe you could replace the light. I think here, the proportion here is not quite right. So the light is quite high, and then it doesn't look like the bed has got a headboard. So I would say add a nice tall headboard here. This one is from John Lewis. How nice is that? And that will add softness and provide a contrast as well against the wall colour in texture and colour and material. So yeah, add a nice headboard, maybe replace the wall light with a pair of vintage ones or mid-century, whatever your style is. They just look great. And a good pair of anything helps the space to feel really cohesive and look really, really good. Also, that headboard, the 2 lights, and I think a bit of art above it will also provide a nice grouping and a really nice focal point. I'm just recording. Okay, shut the door, baby, thank you. Then art. I can see that you've got some kids' art hung up on a string already above the bed. So I just thought a nice idea might be to create some kid art as a family that looks a bit like this. And the way you do it tastefully is you control the colour palette, but just buy tester pots of the paint that you like and use nice brushes. And then you can actually create something really beautiful. This person recommends getting an old canvas from a charity shop. So it doesn't matter what's in the art, but just a nice frame with a canvas. How good is that, Mary Cherry? And then painting the background and then all getting involved. Okay, so then you could have that above your bed. So if you're thinking you've got the headboard, the art above, 2 wall lights, it's looking good. Now, in terms of calm, I would probably stick to greens, beiges, soft whites. Again, this is very much down to your taste and style. No matter what though, you need really good storage, which we're going to get to, and to not have too much stuff on the surfaces. It needs to be a decluttered room for really good sleep and sleep hygiene. So you talked about replacing this IKEA wardrobe, and I just wanted to say a lot of IKEA stuff ends up in landfill. If it's falling apart, if it's not doing its job practically, then that's a different story. But if it's functional, can I instead encourage you to look at potentially extending it here with some more units and just replacing the doors? A Google or a Pinterest search for IKEA wardrobe hack will give you thousands of ideas, and you can add in moulding along the top to make it look built in. You can save a lot of money and a lot of landfill as well. And I think as much storage as possible generally, because that means that the stuff on the surfaces is less. You want less visual clutter for a really calming room. Okay, moving to this image opposite the bed. The curtains are on the plus side. I think they are a great colour. They're clearly full length when they're down, but I would say you just need some more curtain hooks here. So I'd get some more curtain hooks so that you don't have these gappy bits that are kind of hanging down. The bunting is fun, but I would say it's not very calming for a grown-up's room. So I think eventually this should be moved to a kids' room, a kids' area. And instead, I think it needs to be a little bit more pared back and a bit calmer in here. So we also, so we talked about colours, either white or green, or bringing a white and green in the headboard and in the soft furnishings. I think that could look really nice as well. When I'm looking at all of these spaces, I'm always thinking about the same things, and that is arrangement, texture, and contrast. And if you want more of that, I go into really loads of detail in my free webinar. You can sign up in the link in my bio. Let me know if that is helpful. All right, I'll see you next time, everyone.